So, hello everyone. My name's Pat Halford, and it's great to have you here listening and watching our first EMpact Studio podcast. And we're really pleased to welcome advisory board member Cristina Paslar into this first discussion. So, Chris.
Thank you for having me, Pat. It's great to be here in this kind of initiative with the podcasts and also supporting Impact.
Excellent. So, Chris, let me ask you, first of all, you have, over 25 years of experience leading global brands, product development and implementation programs across all of these big corporates. What led you to get involved and get really interested in EMpact Studio?
Well, this is an interesting question. First of all, throughout this, 25 years, I've been seeing various types of initiatives, right? In big corporations, in global roles, several times in regional market roles. And for me, it was always very interesting to see how corporations can really deliver a real impact in people's lives. Several times corporations are doing great work, but it's all about, optimizing internally, which is also good, right? For the profit and for the, evolution of the large corporations. But for me, it's even more meaningful when you have work that is really touching directly people's lives, particularly the ones that are more vulnerable. And when we are working with Impact, it's beautiful because you're bringing innovation, technology, entrepreneurship with startups, with the younger generation, acting in the ag value chain, where really food security is something that is so important in frontier markets. So for me, it's a beautiful combination and a very powerful type of combination that we can bring here with the young generation, with all the intelligence that we have in universities, in the academia, how we also foster this entrepreneurship spirit, right? For in this sparkling, all this good ideas and bringing them to life through a structured way. But not less important, even more important for the mission, right? To tackle the food security issues that we've been living, and acting in agriculture. So for me, it's kind of a combination of so important elements and such an important mission.
That's great. And it's a very global team, actually, that's both on the board of advisors and also, Sammy and Pratik leading the organization as well. I think we have people based in California. Where are you based?
I'm based in New York.
In
Yes,
New
and
York,
we
yeah.
are all in very different places. And it's interesting that sometimes we are able to be together, not always all of us, but part of us. And the hybrid, I would say, communication, it's kind of something that I think came to stay, right? So
Yeah, yeah. And Sammy, of course, is in Côte d'Ivoire, and Pratik, Washington, and I'm here in Finland. But I think that's the beauty of it, is the power and the resources that you can immediately kind of gather and put into action and focus into this EMpact Studio across the various different locations. I think.
yeah, different locations and I think different walks of lives, right? You have people from the corporate world, again, that have been spending most of the life in corporate world like me. You have others that have been more very successful entrepreneurs, tech side, financial, so in universities. So I think it's also diverse in terms of location, diverse in terms of also of kind of experiences.
Yes. Now, one of the most interesting things affecting agricultural technology possibilities at the moment is generative AI, which of course everyone is talking about. And the capabilities are scaling almost on a daily basis, and costs are coming down. And of course, because of mobility, we all have, well, many people in frontier markets are getting access to more and more of these technologies. What is your perspective on the opportunity with generative AI in the ag tech innovation space?
I think we are tapping in an area that will be really a dramatic kind of change for agriculture because I think that, you have now technology that is becoming available for an area where I really feel that the data is so important, because when you're looking into agriculture, you think on, the diverse types of soil. And then you have also the climate and the biodiversity, and you have also the historical kind of vegetation, right? That had kind of a strive or not, or had evolved. So I think that, and also the cultural side. So you have so many variables, right? And you have also climate change. That is something that is acting in another variable that is always bringing new. So I think when you put all this data, right, that is in motion, and you make this available, right, for with several of open sources that exists today around the weather, or kind of that are coming around the different types of soils and chemicals that are in the soils and the biodiversity. So I think that that will help to really guide, I would say, what is the investment or what you're doing, right, in each of the pieces of land, essentially, to really have better harvests, to have better, more optimized production, to really guide what is the best way, right, for this frontier markets to really now become up to kind of a level of other markets that are with great production. So I see that this is going to help democratize, I would say, much more, because several of those more evolved and large agriculture, they have kind of a really much more resources and information. And this is why the production is, so large. Now it's a way with AI to democratize that and to bring this to frontier markets too.
Mm. And of course, these AI capabilities also help us collaborate with universities, with research, with global partners, organizations in the
Exactly.
supply chain, so we can get resources together much faster.
Yeah, and you touched on a very important side, because I was kind of referring for the harvest and the production itself, but you're right that even kind of in the value chain of kind of the commercialization of all the collaboration, kind of with universities. And I think this is also going to be kind of really kind of a different chapter for the frontier markets, because I would say that in the value chain, not only kind of in the before doing the harvest, but even kind of the how you have new frameworks for commercialization. This will be key, right? Also for those farmers and how they collaborate, which is another thing, because competing with or not only competing, but comparing to markets like US or even, let's say, Brazil, the big producers, right? You see kind of you have those large farms, and here in frontier markets, how you can collaborate and in a communal way, right, with those resources to really support kind of a good amount of small farm holders together, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah, actually, you just touched on Brazil, and that's where your family, I
yes.
think, was involved in agriculture. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting because also this is something that in impact that's close to my personal side and my personal, I would say, history. I grew up always going to farms and kind of I always lived in big cities, but kind of a family always had kind of a land and farms, and so this was something that I grew up with, kind of a being always in touch with the land and the farms. And I think it's so interesting to see, even the case of Brazil, how things change dramatically because of technology. So even talking to my father or kind of my family that has been still there, in the, leading and in the leadership of these operations, how things change dramatically because of technology, because of the evolution of technology, of investments in many sides, from what I was mentioning, the seeds to the soil, to the tractors, to the machinery, right, to the commercialization, to the storage. So that is a kind of in terms of, I would say maybe 1 decade, you think kind of that the results or, for harvest could be multiplied, or even 2 decades, you could see kind of how today everything is guided, when you're kind of in the planting season, by satellite, very precise. So everything very, kind of, I would say, guided and evolved because of technology. And yes, I have this history, so I see that, and I think would be so important to bring that to the small farm holders, to kind of a frontier market, and how, this could be open and available, right, for the communities that would need to have this type of progress to strive.
Yes, and you mentioned earlier about the younger generation, and do you see that the advances in these technologies now can really help us to maybe attract younger generation back to the farms once they've been through university, or even stay there and develop new businesses, new technologies themselves, new value chains in the local community? Do you see that as a big opportunity for us here?
I think this is one of the key elements. I remember years ago when I was in a session in one of my roles in a session of the UN, invited by the World Food Program. It was a panel with UNICEF, FAO, the World Food Program, talking about food security. They have done at that time, I think maybe 7 years ago or 8, a massive study that they were releasing around food security. And one of the core elements was really to be able to keep the young generations working in the land, in the farms. That is kind of was one of the critical points to continue looking to the future in terms of how we can tackle and how we can work on this issue of food security. Because the conclusion was that, we need to work in a way that younger generations, they don't leave, they want to stay working on the farms. And I think that technology, AI, startups, universities together, this is again a very powerful combination of elements that can make this more attractive to younger generations. Younger generations are now digitally born, right? They were kind of formed in a different way from the prior generations, just because everything is digital. So this is their kind of a type of mindset, and bringing that and showing that this also belongs to the ag value chain, or it's so important now for us to bring that to the ag value chain, I think can be a very powerful and concrete way to bring appeal for the younger generations to stay, right? To stay and to work, and this combination of technology, the biodiversity, this kind of a mix and the melting pot can really bring very good fruits, let's say. And
Yes.
again, attract the young generations to be there.
Yes, yeah, especially and younger women as well, and inspiring them to really invest more in the agricultural development innovation space.
So I think that several of those smallholder farmers are really kind of a women and the mothers that are kind of taking care of their children, and this is why they are so focused on the production. So, and I think that going back to universities, it's kind of important to have those diversities of kind of thinking too, from kind of having the perspective of the women, right? That they would be always kind of thinking in a way that maybe would see perspectives for kind of the children, the family, but they are also very important in terms of how they see problems, right? How they work on problems. So I think the diversity will be always powerful in any of the areas that we are. To see kind of a diversity of thinking, for me, is very critical to spark innovation, to spark creativity. And when we are talking about kind of what is next, is really always important to have this type of creativity and innovation.
Yes, so we've got this declining cost of technology, We've got improvements in generative AI at the same time. Then we've got access to partnerships, to research at universities, and they're going to be able to do a lot of new, interesting research around molecular, biological design, production processes, all of this kind of thing. What about financing and funding for local entrepreneurs on these farms? How easy is it to get funding and financing for new projects in these frontier markets?
Yeah. So I think again that is what we were being discussing about technology and how you bring those frameworks for our communities. This will also help to bring more visibility and kind of show the potential of those type of projects to attract more fund, right? Or to be able to attract more investments or even credit. Because what is very difficult for probably what we've been seeing when I spent many years working on financial inclusion. And one of the things that we've been saying that is so important in financial inclusion is, first of all, to be in this ecosystem, right, on the financial system, because when you have first access, that is where you start to build knowing how to deal with all the elements there, how we kind of are able to spend and save, and this history that now you are educated in how you deal with finances is what will give you an unlock credit, right, or more investments. Because any type of, I would say, project would need to have some investment when we are talking about kind of a vulnerable communities and frontier markets. Probably we would need to have different types of investments and also credit. And credit is fundamentally unlocked by the history showing kind of the risk and the potential, right? So I think the technology will also make these projects and these communities much more included in the financial system, and will also unlock different sources of funds from the credit side, right? Or when we are talking about grants, sometimes that are kind of the big investors, right, in really kind of potentializing those projects that can, unlock the development of communities, but also when we are talking about even investors that are wanting to see some return, right, in a way that is more of a sustainable growth, right, that have this part of the mentality of some of the investments are dedicated to really sustainable growth. So then I think that information, data, technology, and being that included in this ecosystem will unlock more types of funds for this type of, kind of initiatives.
And at EMpact Studio, what we're also going to be focusing on is showing startups how they can compress the time and the cost by using generative AI to actually get to the stage where they can start having these interesting discussions with the financing and the different funding organizations as well. So that's something we're very focused on.
Yeah, and I think that the beauty of the startups is because then you have kind of a very in-depth, I would say, expertise and effort dedicated to a specific problems, right? To solve a specific part of the problem. So I think the startups will be key because they are nimble, because they are super agile, and because, again, this is the way that we were mentioning, that bringing those younger generations that are kind of just in contact with all the academia and kind of the knowledge of the universities, but helping them to be then being viewed and perceived, right, by the corporations in this intersection, is where they are going to be able to be nurtured, right, kind of, and help them to strive and to accelerate how to tackle and to work on some of the issues in a way that is more agile, which is so different for large corporations, right? Because they have always a big machine and processes. And this is the beauty of the startups, right?
Mm. Now, I'd like to ask you about carbon credits and the agricultural markets. I'm not an expert on carbon credits, but I understand that you have some perspectives on how they can actually be used to benefit growth and development in these frontier markets. Would you like to share some of your thoughts?
Yeah. I think this is also an area where we could have kind of attract more resources, right, for the frontier markets, the communities, and those projects. Because today, when we are talking about sustainability at large, and we are talking about how, the big corporations are committed to net zero. And we know that they're going to, and they've been doing a lot of effort to reduce as much as they can their carbon footprint, and how kind of they really are kind of a much greener, let's say, in their operations. But we know that there will be a portion that will probably not be possible. And this is where the carbon credits market would kind of start to potentially favor for those kind of communities that are actually doing work that are really kind of important for sustainability and sequestering carbon. And I think that this can be, and I've been discussing this with EMpact, another important income for those small farm holders. Of course, there are now big discussions on the types of carbon credits, on how to price them correctly, on what are the sources and the formation of those, all the different classifications. But I truly think that when we are talking about frontier markets and agriculture, it's something that would always bring back to the sustainable, I would say, way of the environment, because to produce well, you need to have the good conditions in terms of the soil and the climate and the forest around, the humidity. So we've been seeing in Africa with some large organizations that have been working around kind of how to bring back some of the forests to make the conditions for the smallhold farmers better, for them to have better produce, and several times even to bring back, I would say, the levels of humidity that is needed for their plantations. And all this bringing back this natural, let's say, environment is also something that can be leveraged as an extra income for them in terms of carbon credit. There are also discussions around how much even what the farming is doing, right? That is also sequestering carbon. So I think there are many potential areas that could be very important type of source of income, right? Mm-hmm. To fund and to bring more, I would say, investment to the communities that really need, right, to have more investment to strive.
And probably opportunities for local entrepreneurs to create new digital services maybe around these as well.
Yeah, I think that, of course, the way and how this will be landing from the carbon markets, the big corporations, how that is able to intersect with the small farm holders, it will need to be kind of streamlined, as you're saying. And of course, having someone that is in local, close, but also with access of, let's say, systems and information, this needs to be kind of put in place. And again, it's opportunity for the startups that are there, how you organize this in an ecosystem that is possible to unlock, I would say, those kind of incomes to come to the small farm holder. But I think there's another area that I see the potential because of so many commitments of the large corporations with net zero, and in few years the need, right, and even now, right, to secure for them to secure the carbon credits that they need.
Fantastic, thank you. Um, uh, the last question I was going to ask you actually is because you have this global role and there's probably so many things going on in your portfolio. How do you stay up to date with agricultural innovations? Is that because of your natural passion from your history, or I mean, how do you keep yourself informed in terms of agricultural technologies and where things are going?
I need to say that this is a mix of my personal, let's say, side with my family that I've been always in touch in Brazil. Kind of, although I'm living here in New York, we've been living here in New York as a family. We are always there. But at the same time, because I always see coincidentally things in my kind of corporate roles that are touching the agriculture, food security, also kind of the ag value chain. When I was working with financial inclusion, ag value chain is something so important. Working with, kind of in the intersection of the corporate and the business and purpose-driven kind of initiatives with the largest, NGOs in the world, looking into the frontier markets, but also how you keep young generation in the farms and food security was kind of bringing back always kind of the topic of agriculture. Now working with IBM and AI, we see kind of also AI and even partnerships with NASA around the climate and the different types of kind of a specific forecasts for even to help the agribusiness, in a large scale that can benefit also frontier markets. So, and the evolution of generative AI that can help the ag value chain from, as we were saying, in the intersection of biology, right? Also with kind of the mechanical side, but, kind of the local nuances and characteristics to also the commercialization, how Gen AI can help all of that. So it's interesting that I've been always with the background of my family, and this is a passion, but in the corporate world, always I've been seeing kind of a different perspectives where it's always touching with kind of the agriculture, so business and the value chain. So this is why it's for me a passion to be, supporting and serving EMpact as one of the advisory board members, because I think this is a passion that is always kind of somehow intertwined in my career. And I stay in touch because it's actually by seeing things being new, being released, and kind of friends that work also in large corporations that are very close, in this industry. And I think, to be honest, is one of the key elements for, the sustainable life for all of us, right? So it's kind of a very fascinating, I would say, segment. And for me, it's a natural attraction to be always in touch with what is the next and how it's transformed so much over the years and what else we can continue to do. So, and also how you bring all the evolution that achieved in a part of the world to frontier markets, but in a way that is possible for them to have them, right? That in their, let's say, in the formation that we see the frontier markets, the local communities, the small farm holders, how you transport from the big productions to the small farm holders in a more communal way. So it's a fascinating, complex topic, but I think that is very much needed for sustainable life.
Well, Cris Paslar, EMpact Studio Advisory Board member, thank you very much for sharing your insights and your passion for the opportunity that EMpact Studio is very much focused on. Thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you, Pat, for this conversation. Very interesting and always very grateful to be here with EMpact and with you.
Thank you.